Okay, so today joining me, I have the Chief Executive of the Food Service Equipment Association, Keith Warren. He's probably the busiest guy in the industry right now. I know that FEA has been doing a lot of liaison with the government, so can you just kind of give a quick overview of the requests that you've made and what kind of interaction you've had recently?
Yeah. Well, our interaction with government operationally was already at a fairly high level because of the Brexit issue. And many of the civil servants, principally within the Department of Business, were transferred across to dealing with COVID. So it was, in a sense, business as usual in terms of the communication, but on a different subject. So a lot of our work has been operational. And I have to say, government is working extremely effectively. We're getting real-time answers to questions on behalf of members, and many of our members have benefited from that. That's ongoing. At a political level, the letter that we drafted that went into Boris Johnson, where we collaborated with CEDA and NC and CEDA Bond as well, called for, yes, the extension of the furloughs, which we're now seeing come through, of course.
Yes, the announcement this week.
And that's where operationally as trade associations, in representing what in terms of the overall economy is a small element, those small elements that we ask for do get replicated and used in the broader perspective of government legislation. That's what we've seen. And as we know that the letters are going at high level through our patron, Lord Trefgarne. We're doing work on the European basis as well, because similar problems in Europe. So through FSEM, we're actually collating a piece of work at the moment to show what the state of reopening might be for the industry across Europe. And we'll share that with the industry when it's ready. So yes, building on really what we've always done in terms of political representation. And we've been able to call some favours in on that as well.
Okay, so has the government or have any other parties in Westminster really been engaging with you and responding?
Yes, and we were delighted to have the opportunity to put the paper that we sent to the Prime Minister into the interest group of the 85 MPs for whom hospitality is a significant part of the economy within their constituencies. And that led to the meeting that we had with Lucy Powell last Friday. She's the Shadow Business Minister. And really what the opposition are looking to do is find the gaps in the government's policy making. Now, I have to say, I think the leadership and direction that government have given has been strong and it's been well directed, but there are gaps opening up that we see. Business rate grants is one example. Key worker status for our industry is another. The fact that some members are still paying an apprentice levy, but in reality, there isn't any access to training for those apprentices. This is not right in terms of where it should be. And I think another key element, and we saw it come through in the Chancellor's statement just yesterday, is issue of the supply chain and the cash moving through the supply chain, because that's the big problem that we face in terms of the financial security of industry. And so representing issues like that is critical. So the broader as our perspective can be, the stronger our message. And just on one final point, we're very grateful to all the companies out there that have used the templated letter that we've sent out to use with their MPs. And that's getting significant traction. So we're going in at the bottom, we're going in at the top. So we've got a better chance of getting what we want on behalf of the industry from that.
So what was the upshot of last week's roundtable meeting then?
We were able to give the shadow team a briefing at what's going on at granular level, because I think government is having to address the top end issues, but the real issues are in the detail. And some of those points I've just made are really what the opposition can hone in on. And we know there are all sorts of side meetings and other questions that get asked in different ways that we think the government will want to cover, but they need to be alerted to them. So yes, the apprentice levy being one issue, the movement of cash through the industry, and also supporting our 10,000 workers who are underpinning the 3.1 million that are employed in hospitality. They can't store, cook or wash up the dishes afterwards without our industry. So it is vital that government supports and provides some form of an incubation process for smaller businesses, so that when things do start to return, the whole of the supply chain is there to be able to pick up with it. because the tragic loss will be the skills, the knowledge and experience from our industry. And we won't be able to get that back because there are other industries that are trading relatively normally through this, certainly not withstanding the catastrophic decline in sales that we've seen of up to 100% and in most cases 90% drop in sales. If we lose people in our industry, we will struggle to get them back or train new people in our industry. It's going to be critical that government carries on that support for our sector alongside what they're doing for hospitality and the operator.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Boris Johnson's most recent pronouncements, with his roadmap to earliest point of reopening the hospitality industry, slated at the moment for the beginning of July, how realistic do you think that is, and how is the catering equipment supply chain going to be impacted by that?
The key issue as we emerge from this is going to be innovation, and that's going to be innovation at every level. The operators are going through that process at the moment, and they need to innovate in terms of what they provide us as a consumer. I think we all recognise that coming out of this, it won't be the same industry as we went into it. And so it means different styles of serving because of the distancing requirements. It means different capacity levels within restaurants. So those operators that can adapt to that will prosper. I think through the dealer and the supply chain and design element, they will prosper if they can come up with solutions with operators to bring about the equipment and systems that address those particular needs. And then I think for equipment suppliers, it's an opportunity to bring those innovative pieces of equipment to market that perhaps produce the magic of the 20% more output from 20% less floor space that we hear about, that also reduce energy costs, because costs are going to be under so much scrutiny and pressure. There's an opportunity to really realistically look at life cycle costs of equipment and the benefits that brings, because those operators that come back up will want to invest in what their future is, and that's going to need all of those constituent parts to deliver on that. And we've already seen significant interest in the energy level through our members. They're having the discussions with the operators about those true life cycle costs of running equipment and running the overall kitchen.
Yeah, so obviously FEA represents catering equipment manufacturers and suppliers. So what has your membership come to you and asking you to help with during these challenging times?
And there are different pain points at the different levels. So yes, we've got the manufacturers, we have importers and distributors and design companies, and also service companies. And different elements have had different operational needs. But overall, the critical factor has been the access to funding and seeking the business rate grants that others are enjoying within the market, typically the operators. Also looking very seriously at what we might be able to do to provide a framework or a structure to help hold the value chain together and the exchange of the cash through that chain because of that interdependence. So they're two of the key issues that have come through, wanting the recognition for our industry that it needs and that it deserves, of course.
Are you seeing those grants and that financial assistance trickling through, or is that still a bit of a roadblock at the moment?
It's still tough and it's patchy, and part of the problem is that the majority of the grants are for those with a high footfall of the public, and of course the sorts of businesses we represent don't have that. But so we've got to keep seeking the reassurance from government that they'll provide the support that businesses need. The furloughing is useful on the staff side, but as we know, there are so many other costs associated with running a business. They need support on a broader perspective than that.
So FEA during this time has organised a number of webinars and training sessions for its membership at this time. So can you take us through what you've done and why you've done it? Yes,
we saw that what we needed to do was give business access to as much good quality and relevant and advice and information as possible. And throughout everything we've done, it's based around the 3 I's of involvement, information and influence, our core values. We wanted to look at it from a tactical point of view in terms of scenario planning and what business you should be looking at. So we had 2 webinars with Martin Drake that addressed those issues and gave business managers a real insight into the challenges they were facing, but give them some real solutions as to how they can address them. And then using the services of Steve Loughton, we looked at some of the more tactical and industry facing issues, given his 45 years of experience within the industry. Well, we consolidated that into 45 minutes, we like to think. And again, we had on all the webinars, we've had about 60 to 70 members involved in them. And then latterly, we addressed the issue of pricing and looking at the role of pricing in terms of sales, margin and volumes, and what businesses could do to take a more strategic approach to pricing, which we know is a critical factor in the market, but it's going to be a critical factor for those that succeed and evolve through the challenges that we're facing at the moment and come through the other side. So we're trying to resource the industry with the tools it needs to make the right decisions at the right time.
Okay, excellent. So going forwards then, I know it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen, but if you were to kind of look into your crystal ball, how do you think that once we come out to some semblance of normality, how is this going to impact the catering equipment supply chain in the UK? What's it going to look like?
It's going to be a changed industry, and at every level we all recognise that. I think the key factor is once we get the timelines on what the operator is able to do, that will allow the other elements of the chain to come into play. And it's really going to see the transition from a supply chain to a value chain, because it's only those businesses that add value that will prosper and succeed. I think we'll see a rapid growth in the use of the connectivity solutions related to equipment, because operationally it's a win-win for the operator, and it will take cost out of the business. So we already know those innovations are out there. It will probably move things forward in a matter of months, which would otherwise have taken perhaps 10 years to get through, for example. So those opportunities will come through. The whole design element of commercial kitchens and food service operations and what that means. Whilst we don't know exactly what it will look like, what we do know is that those that can match those needs will be the businesses that will survive. And yes, we'll see some changes, but we all enjoy eating and drinking out of home. Operators are renowned for coming up with solutions to that, and as the UK, I believe we have the most advanced food service industry in the globe. Partly because we're 70 million on a very small island with lots of different aspects to what gets provided to us when we eat away from home. We've already seen the innovation going on with Michelin-star restaurants offering takeaway services. The industry is great at adapting, and this will be its biggest chance to adapt, although forced on it and not in the best possible circumstances, we'll all agree. But I think the core is keep close to your customer. Keep close to understanding what their pain points are, and if you can come up with solutions that will overcome them, then that puts your business in good stead to be able to support them through the equipment that it's providing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for joining me today, Keith.